So sometimes helping people split up is positive. So they can each move on and find partners who meet their needs.
Hi, my name is Mina Kim, your host of the Klickline. I've worked on Wall Street for over 14 years. Then I built out Orange Theory Fitnesses and sold them to a private equity firm. And upon that exit, started investing in women and minority startups, as well as advising women who are getting divorced with financial consulting and strategy. We want to welcome Barbara Rothberg today to the Klickline. She has over 40 years experience in family therapy and social work. She has taught couples therapy courses to graduate students at Hunter and NYU Schools of Social Work for more than 20 years. She has a collaborative practice in divorce coaching and family specialist work, where she has completed advanced training programs in child-inclusive mediation as well as elder mediation. Barbara is what I call the triple threat. She's a divorce coach, she's a parent coordinator, and a therapist. Welcome, Barbara, to the Klickline.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. We're so grateful you're here. And so if you could first talk to the audience about the areas of practice that you're in.
Well, as you said, I have several hats that I wear, depending on what people need. I started my life as a professional, as a couple and family therapist many, many years ago. So I used to work with individuals, but I don't do that so much now because I found working with couples much more rewarding. So I work with couples and I try to help them stay together, figure out their issues, and work with families, help them figure out their issues, look at all their dynamics together. If by some chance it doesn't work, then I work on helping them separate amicably. I work as a mediator, and I have training in mediation, and I work as a family specialist with collaborative divorce, which means the couple works with two attorneys, a family specialist like me, and also a financial professional. So couples get a team to work together to help them to divorce in an amiable way. So the goal, in no matter what I do, is to help couples work as an amiable pair after they're divorced, if that's what they need to do. Now, as a parent coordinator, which is a job I do after people are divorced, I help them amiably work with their children. When a couple divorces, they're no longer spouses, but they are forever parents. And I tell people that all the time. And that's kind of a hard concept when people abandon each other and arguing over finances and having a really hard time. But the truth is, mom and dad are always mom and dad, no matter what happens. And the children need their parents. So my mantra is, your parents forever. So you need to work it out and have an amiable relationship so you can get along and co-parent in a positive way. And I help parents do that as a parent coordinator. And I find that work extremely rewarding.
Amazing. And so how would you differentiate between what you do as a divorce coach and as a therapist, how that's different?
They're different hats. A divorce coach really is a job of support to work in the here and now to help somebody through a divorce. What are the issues that are coming up? What are the emotional issues? Help them over that hump of dealing with the realities, dealing with the pragmatics. Sometimes it's just a matter of really just giving a lot of support and reassurance that somebody really can get over this, especially if the person did not want the divorce. If couples want a divorce, it's usually pretty simple. But when someone doesn't, if you have one spouse who wants a divorce and the other one who doesn't, it's extremely difficult to accept that. So there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of anger. What is my life going to be like? So there's a lot of support to help them deal with the reality of the situation. Then a divorce coach will help somebody through the process of divorce. If they're in mediation or if they're in litigation, it's even harder because then it's usually an angrier, more difficult divorce, to help them have their voice and to help them say what they need to say and to be able to help them pragmatically with figuring out what they want. What kind of child rearing plan do they want? What kind of parenting plan? How often do they want to see their children? Do they want to split custody? Do they want to do it 50-50? Do they want to do part-time custody? Do they want their ex to have half-time or full-time or 2 days a week or 5 days and 2 days? There's all kinds of parenting plans. So I help people understand the different parenting plans and help them figure out what's going to work best for them. As a divorce coach, the pragmatics are really important, and I help them focus on that. As a therapist, you go down deeper. You look at family of origin issues. You look at what is brought up from, if you're getting divorced, what's brought up from your own childhood. What often happens is the people who have the hardest time and really need to go into therapy around this are those who have come from divorced families where they had a traumatic event around the divorce, where it was a very, very difficult divorce when they were a child. And I've had parents say to me, I swore I would never do this to my children, and here I am getting divorced, and I never, ever wanted to do this. And there's a lot of difficulty in how am I going to help my children be okay? And in those situations in therapy, we go back and look at what happened when they were young, what happened when their parents divorced, how old were they, how did they feel, how were they treated, what kind of custody plan did they have, how did that work? And then we look at what they could do today and how they can reconcile the past and the present and make the present better. As a divorce coach, we don't go into the history. We don't go into the trauma of what happened. So you go much deeper as a therapist. It's a different role. When I've at times worked as a divorce coach and somebody needs a therapist, I'll refer them to somebody else to do the therapy work because it's a different kind of work.
Got it. Okay, great. That's good to know. And so going back to divorce coaching and the different scenarios for custody, etc. Before that, though, are people coming to you before deciding to get divorced, wanting to see like all these possible scenarios? Or is it once they file and they're like, oh crap, I need to go get a divorce coach?
It's a combination. I sometimes get couples coming to me undecided. We think we might want a divorce. We're not sure. Or one person saying, I think I want a divorce. And the other one says, maybe, maybe not. And they say, maybe we could work together and understand what our issues are and is there hope for this relationship or not. So there are times that I'll work with a couple, and this is really therapy, but I'll work with them to understand what their problems are in the relationship, what are the difficult dynamics, what would have to change to make this relationship work, and to understand how they communicate with each other. And sometimes couples end up working in therapy and staying together. And sometimes even after 1 or 2 sessions, they say, you know what, this is not going to work. We need a divorce. And then it's clear. So it's very helpful to sometimes come in and work with a therapist around figuring out, do you want a divorce or not?
What would you say are some of the common issues that you're seeing with couples who are coming in?
Well, there's one couple I'm working with now, and one of their biggest issues is parenting. It's a second marriage. They each have children from their first marriage. So it's a blended family. They each have 2 kids, and they parent very differently. And because their parenting styles are different, and they had many years of parenting prior to this marriage, here the kids are thrown together, and one parent is very strict, and one parent is a little loosey-goosey. And that's really hard for the kids because you can't have 4 kids in the house being treated very differently. So there's enormous conflict. So that's one of the issues. Sometimes the issues are finances. Sometimes the issues are where they want to live. Geography is often a big issue. Somebody wants to move. Somebody wants to leave the area that you're living in. So those are very common issues.
And so for people who come with different parenting styles, how do you help them reach, a middle ground when maybe, I don't know how old the kids are, but for 10 years, one was able to go to sleep at midnight and do whatever they wanted. And then another one was on this strict 9 p.m. schedule, had to get all their homework done by then, etc. How do you find that middle ground? And was this discussed before they got married?
Of course not. They don't. Little things like this are never discussed before people get married. And that's why it's hard. And that's why they end up in conflict, because things weren't discussed. That opens up another issue of what premarital counseling is, because that's another area that I sometimes I get involved in. But when a couple, let's say the example you just gave me, where kids have different bedtimes and they're allowed to do different things, the first question to ask the parents is, are you willing to work together to find a time that might work for both of you? Can you change things with your children or not? And part of that might have to do with how old the kids are. If the kids are in teenage years and past a certain point where they're not going to be able to adhere to a different schedule, then you really can't change it. If they're already 14, 15 years old and they go to sleep whenever they want at midnight, you're not going to change that with that intense rebellion and too much anger. So then you're going to have to be able to say, his kids do this and her kids do that, and this is what it is, and you have to work on parallel parenting, where you each do things your own way, and they'll have to discuss that and make it open. And that's hard to do, but it is doable. If kids are younger, then you can be able to say, we've talked together, we think this is best for you, and we make an agreement on what the best thing is. Parents have to be willing to do the work.
They have to be willing and open to suggestions and doing the work, and not being stubborn in what they think is right. And so it makes me think of, like, if you're getting married early in your 20s or even like early 30s, let's say, you may not even know what your partner's parenting style will be. They may not even really know, let's be honest. And so you have a child and situations come up, right?
That's true, but there's always a hint, because oftentimes people will parent the way they were parented or the total opposite way. So people either replicate their own upbringing, or they say, I hated the way my mother brought me up. I'm doing something very different. So it's generally one way or the other. So a good question to often ask people is, what kind of parenting did you have when you were a child? And if they were very different, then you see how that gets impacted in their life.
And so how long would you suggest for a couple to have premarital counseling before getting married?
The hard thing is there's no rules, because everybody's different. Some people can easily resilient and can easily make changes in their lives and feel like, I could try that and let's see how that works. Other people are very much more rigid in their personality. This is the right thing. This is what I want to do, and that's it. Other people feel like, I'll give it a shot. I'll give it a try. If it doesn't work, then we have to negotiate and try something else. So it depends on the personalities. And it also depends on how much conflict there really is. I did premarital counseling with one couple where the woman wanted children and the man she was marrying said, I never wanted kids. Now that's a big
Wow.
That's a big, big, big one.
Was that never discussed?
Well, that's why they came to counseling.
Okay.
Because this was a big issue. And they ended up splitting up because it was so important to both of them. And that was the right thing for them. Because if one person is set on, I want children, and the other one says, I do not, and they were about 30 years old, so she didn't have that much time being already 30. So they split up, and it was the right thing for them to do. So sometimes helping people split up is positive, so they can each move on and find partners who meet their needs. So if I come with that value judgment of, it doesn't mean everybody doesn't have to have kids, but you both have to have an agreement on what's going to work in your marriage.
I can imagine as a therapist, it's very difficult sometimes seeing couples where you feel like it may not work out because of one reason or another. How do you deal with that?
That's a hard one. People often ask me that. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard because it's painful when I see people having a really hard time. And I see people really upset about something, and I can't change their feelings. I can just support them and try to help them see the light and see that life does get better. And there are things that are very, very difficult for a lot of people. But if you have a positive attitude, I do believe we can get through hard stuff. And support is really crucial. And I also ask when I work as a therapist, if people are having a hard time, I try to help them with building a support system if they don't have one. Because I, of course, am part of their support system, but they need other people. They need friends, maybe support group. Um, they need to be able, if they have family who support them, they really need to have other things aside from just a therapist. Because if you're going through a hard time, it takes a village.
Yes, absolutely. And so you mentioned kind of different scenarios for custody. Could you walk through some of those examples? So for the audience they're not aware of what 2-5 means and all of these different things that you mentioned.
Joint custody is very popular with a lot of people. And that can mean anything from completely joint being 50-50. It could be a week, every other week, the children go back and forth, which is a great schedule for children with teenagers because teenagers can settle in each house and go back and forth. I've had people say to me they want to do a week and a week, and they have a 4-year-old. That is not a good schedule for a 4-year-old because developmentally, a 4-year-old needs to have that connection to the primary caregiver and can't be away for a week because the child is way too small. So for a child that young, if they want 50-50, it's got to be organized in a way where sometimes people do 2 days, 3 days, 2 days, 3 days, and they switch it every week. And they look at a calendar and they do switches. And sometimes that's hard because it's always changing, but it works for some people. Some people do what we call a 2-5-5-2, and that's a very popular schedule. And what that means is one parent has every Monday and Tuesday night, the other parent has every Wednesday and Thursday night, and Friday, Saturday, and Sunday get alternated. So the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday hook on to the other 2 days every other week. So in a 2-week period, each parent has literally 50-50. They have 2 days one week and 5 days the next. That's a great schedule for lots of people. If the children are young, I often suggest in the 5-day period, the non-custodial parent has time with the kids. Either she or he has a dinner or an afternoon or goes to the playground with the children or does something so there's contact. Because sometimes 5 days is too much for young kids. And sometimes it's too much for the parents to not be with the child. So balancing parents' needs and children's needs. I had one mom sit and cry with me when she was getting a divorce, and she said, I didn't have children to be with them half time. I want my children all the time. And she just stopped. And it's very sad not to have your kids all the time if you really want to be with them. But both parents often feel that way. So if there's a divorce, that means you have to be able to split your kids in a way that's amiable, but that works for the children. So we always do parenting plans based on what's good for the kids. And we look at who the children are and what the best kind of schedule is to meet their needs. The parents also have to live relatively close to each other, so they get to school relatively the same amount of time. You don't want a parent living an hour away from the school and the other parent living 10-minute walking distance, because then every the child's with the parent who lives far away, it's going to be a long time to get to school, and the child's going to resent that. You'd have to get up early in the morning, have to be transportation, if you're driving, it's traffic. If you're in New York, you're on a subway. And it's not a great way to start the day. So ideally, parents who want 50-50 in custody live in the same area, so the kids can get to school in more or less equal way.
Right. But hypothetically, if one partner has to be in New York, let's say, for work, and one has to be in LA for work. How do you work out a situation like that?
I've had those numerous times. Generally, the rule divorce laws are different in every state. In New York, generally where the marital home was is the primary residence. So if the family lived in New York, the person who goes to LA loses primary custody. So the other parent who stays in New York would have primary custody, and the other parent would be coming to New York ideally frequently. I have one situation where a man works actually in California and comes to New York 1 week a month and works remotely when he's here and spends time with his kids 1 week a month. And he also has extra time in the summer. He has extra time during the kids' holidays, during their school breaks, and that's how he sees the children. But obviously, they have to live in one place and go to one school. You can't go back and forth to different schools.
Yeah, you can't go to school on two coasts. And so what are some tools that you provide your clients when they're going through the decision-making and planning process? I know you mentioned some things, but what are some other tools that you use?
One of the most important tools that I like to offer when parents are beginning to split up is how to tell the children. This is often one of the biggest concerns that parents have. How am I going to tell my kids? They have no idea. Or we fight a lot, but they're not going to be happy. They're not going to want to know that we're getting divorced. So I talk to parents about, first I ask, what would you like to tell them? And sometimes people will have very reasonable things. We fight a lot. We don't get along. We think we'll be better off separately. And those are good things to tell kids. I had had situations, particularly with if there's a situation like an affair, where somebody is very angry, and a woman said to me, I only want to be honest with my children. I'm going to tell them that he left us because he had an affair and he didn't care about us anymore, and that's why we're getting a divorce. That is not good for kids, because what that does is put the children in the middle. The children will be mad at the mom for saying that and mad at the dad for having the affair. So the kid is going to be left right in the middle and feel no support from anybody. So in that situation, I said, you can't do that. It's not fair to your child. I'm going to give you recommendations that'd be good for your kids. And she said to me, I only want my children to know the truth. I said, let's find a truth that might work. So I started asking a lot of questions. How did the two of you get along? Not well. Did you fight? Yes. Were you distant from each other? Was there tension? Yes, there was a lot of tension in the house. We bickered all the time. He ended up sleeping on the couch because we were mad at each other so much. I said, do you think your kids knew that? Well, obviously they knew that. I said, well, that's honest. How about if you tell them, Mom and Dad didn't get along very well. We've been bickering. There's been a lot of tension. I think you've noticed that Dad's been sleeping on the couch, and we're just not getting along. Is that honest? She said, yes. It's not the whole truth. I said, but it's a truth they can hear. You're not saying anything dishonest. So I got them to agree that that's what they were going to tell their children. And this way, the children didn't have to hear adult business, which they had not. An affair is not children's business. It's adult business that children should never be part of. But they got the truth. The parents didn't get along, and they were going to split up and be happier in separate homes.
But what if there was a concert and you found out your spouse was cheating?
Oh, I think we recently had a situation, didn't we? It's been all over social media. Tell them not to go to a Coldplay concert, right?
Yeah. So then everyone finds out, and all the kids' friends find out, and it's all over media. Then what happens? How would you approach that?
Well, then you have to talk about the cold hard facts, because that's known. And that's a really tough situation. And I feel bad for those children.
Same. Yeah, for sure.
Because that should never happen. And obviously they didn't use much discretion in being out in public in that kind of way and being demonstrative with one another publicly.
Yeah. And also, what age is there an age where it's appropriate? Because, you know, as teenagers, I feel like teenagers are much more aware of what's happening with the parents, their environment, and may pick up on things, little things here and there that make it more obvious if there was, for instance, a cheating situation or something like that. In that type of situation, would you tell the, I guess, more grown child, even though they're still quite, young?
I would never tell a child there's been an affair, because telling children that a parent cheated puts a child in a really hard situation, because generally everybody knows cheating is bad. And you're telling your child you have a bad parent. That's hard for a child to concept. So I would never advise telling a child that a parent cheated. I don't think it's good for a child. I would much rather just talk about the fact that they didn't get along. And the fact is, if you have a really good relationship, people don't cheat. So it's really honest, because people cheat and have affairs when they're not happy. If you're really happy in a marriage, you don't need to do that. And it's acting out. It's bad behavior. It's not a good way. If you're unhappy, a better way to deal with it is to end the marriage in a positive way where there's not so much anger and betrayal. Because once there's an affair, then you have to deal with the person who was betrayed has all these feelings of, this is going on for all these months, I didn't know about it, the lying, the betrayal, which makes it hard then to co-parent, because they don't trust the ex. If one of them says, this is not working, we need a divorce, they get through it. And then you don't have the betrayal of the lying to deal with. So it's an easier way to reestablish a co-parenting relationship that can be positive.
Yes, because I can imagine the anger taking over and preventing a lot of things from moving forward, not only the parent relationship with the child, but the co-parenting relationship that's going to have to happen for the rest of your life anyways. And then whatever the divorce proceedings are, being able to come to an agreement. You don't want this to go on forever. You want to be able to eventually move on. So there's multiple reasons to be able to find an amicable solution for everyone.
Yeah. And it's best for the kids, and parents are happier. And it really is possible for people to be able to get along with each other and have a big binuclear family where people do things together. I share my own situation. I was divorced very early on. I had young children, and my ex-husband and we co-parented very happily. We did joint custody. He had the kids half the time. I had the kids half the time. They're all grown now, and I am a grandmother. We have grandchildren. We share we do Thanksgiving. I've remarried. He came to my wedding with his partner, and we do Thanksgivings together. And we're one family. We all care about each other. So I know it's possible. So I do this work very honestly because I know it's possible. People can get over it, though I'm not going to say it was always easy. And I'm not going to say there wasn't anger at certain times over the years, but you get over things. If you look at what the priorities are and what's most important, and the children know that we all care about each other.
So I want to go back to one point you mentioned before. When you are advising clients who come from a divorced family, do you often find that they're repeating the situation that they were in before when their families got divorced and what they're going through in their marriage?
Sometimes, not always, but sometimes it does happen, because if a situation happens where a parent is a child of divorce, and let's say they had their father was cheating, and they knew their father was cheating, particularly in older times, there wasn't as much advice about what to tell children. There's a lot more advice today about what to tell kids. We're much more psychologically minded. There's so much to read on the internet, and lots of years ago you didn't have that. So if a parent grew up in a divorced household, and say the father was a cheating father and the mother was always depressed and upset, that woman is going to have trouble trusting a husband. She's going to have trouble trusting. How could she be in a relationship and that person's not going to cheat on her? So it might be very hard for that person just to even form a good relationship.
Yeah, that's true. And so this interesting is why you're saying that. I was thinking about once when I was in middle school, my parents were fighting. My mom said to me that, I think I want to get divorced to your dad. What do you think? No, I think I was probably in 6th grade, actually, thinking about it. 6th or 7th. And I was like, oh shit, I have to make a decision. Because she's like, what do you think? And so I said, if you're not happy and you don't want to be married, then do it.
Well,
That's
you were
what
a
I
very
said.
wise young girl. But it's so much responsibility. And then if she did get divorced, I don't know if she did or not, and she wasn't happy, you would feel so much responsibility for that.
Yeah. And I remember her asking me, who would you live with? And I was like, well, you, because like you cook and stuff, obviously. Like, I know my dad can. He passed away a while ago. But I brought this up to her actually, I don't know, it might have been like 5 years ago. I was like, hey, you remember that time that you wanted to get divorced? And she's like, I did. I said that. She didn't even remember. So that's probably like a whole nother deep dive into a therapy session. But
yeah, but you see the impact that it would have on a child. It's not
Yes,
a
for
child's
sure.
responsibility. And I would never ask a child, who do you want to live with? Because that would make the child feel very guilty if they chose one parent over another. If I chose my mom cooks and she'd be the obvious one was maybe the maid caretaker, but how's dad going to feel? And it's coming from these decisions are parental decisions. Decisions around custody should be top down. Parents tell children, this is what's going to happen and it's going to be okay.
Yes, for sure.
And that's what's really important. And that's one of the things that I talk about a lot, that you have to reassure your children. It's going to be okay. This is what's going to happen. We will take care of you. We are the parents.
Yes, for sure. And so what would you say is one of the most rewarding situations or cases that you've worked on? I'm sure you have a ton.
I've been lucky enough to have several. And a couple come to mind. One is when I worked with a couple as a parent coordinator, and there was a little 10-year-old boy who was very torn. His parents were very, very angry at each other. And they were very, very torn. He was very, very torn between who he should listen to, and he wanted to be a good boy. He was a child who was very active and very overly scheduled. He had activities all the time. His father pushed him to play baseball. His mother pushed him to play soccer. Both are very nice things to do for a 10-year-old boy. And the mother said he shouldn't be playing so much baseball because he's missing soccer practices. The father said he shouldn't be playing so much soccer, he's missing baseball practices. So after them arguing, and I couldn't get anything from both of them because it was so angry, I said, how about if I meet with your son? And I met with the child, and he was very sweet and very articulate. And he told me he felt really torn between his parents. He wanted to please them both. So he does both activities, but he's very tired. And I really felt for this kid. And I said, what do you like better? And he really struggled with it. And he said, I like soccer better, but I'm afraid to tell my dad because he'll be mad at me. So I asked him if I could help him tell his father. And he said, would you do that? And I said, yes, I would do that. And if you want, we could do it together. And I can help you tell your dad together, because it's not that you don't love your dad. It's like you really love one activity better than the other. You don't love mom better because you like soccer. It just happens you like the activity better. And it was a very successful case. And the parents were able to hear it. So that was very rewarding. Another really interesting case I had, which is a little bit different. I had a couple who had divorced, and the wife was very angry and jealous of her ex-husband's new girlfriend. They were together for quite a while, and they moved in together. And the ex-wife knew it. They were together about 2 years. And this woman was spending time with her children, of course, because she was living with the dad. And the mother was extremely jealous and angry and said, she's taking over my job, she's not respecting me. And she was really, really angry. And it was making their co-parent relationship very, very difficult. So I'm a family therapist, and I feel like you bring everybody in and you talk about it and talk about what you honestly feel and you work it out. So I said, how about if we invite the girlfriend into a meeting with us? So they were both a little surprised and said, well, the husband said, I could ask her. And the wife said, well, I'm gonna give her a piece of my mind, and I'm going to tell her what I think. And I said, well, we're going to talk about what you're going to tell her. We're going to talk about what your concerns are. So we're not going to barrage her, but we're going to try to have an understanding. You are the mom. You are the biological mom, and mom and dad make the decisions. But this woman is a stepmom, and she's living with your ex-husband, with your children, half of every week. So she really is going to have an impact with your children. So if you know her and talk to her and you get to have some kind of relationship, then things will be easier. So I convinced them to do a joint session, and I had the three of them in together. And we talked about rules and boundaries. What's the role of the parents? What's the role of the stepmother? Who disciplines the children? Can the stepmother discipline the children or not? The stepmother was apparently buying a whole lot of clothes for a little girl, and the mom felt very threatened by the fact that she was buying her all these clothes. So the mom told her that and said, it's really hard for me that you buy her all these pretty clothes. And she said, but I love her. I want to take care of her. She said, but it's too hard for me. So we got her to understand that she felt so jealous, and maybe she shouldn't be buying as many clothes. She should buy something just for presents, for birthdays and holidays, and maybe not just bringing her so many gifts. And she agreed to stop buying so much clothes. And the mother felt very gratified that she wasn't always showing up with new things, and the daughter was not. She felt like the daughter was being bribed to love this new person. So we took that away. And I said, play games with her. She doesn't need so many new clothes. Sit down on the floor and play a game with her. She was a 6-year-old.
That's a great solution.
The relationships got better. And the mom, and then I suggested that the mom and the girlfriend go out for coffee together. And just the two of them begin to talk to each other, get to know each other. Because they're both in this child's life. So, and they need to work together to give this child a happy life. And that worked.
That's amazing. And so how do you feel about when a step parent wants to discipline and it may not be the same style or direction that the biological parent feels is necessary?
I think the reality is if that starts to happen, the child will be very angry at the step parent, and it will destroy that relationship. So I generally say the parent should do the major disciplining, not the step parent. And let the parent be the quote bad one. Let the parent say, no, you're grounded if you do X, Y, Z, or whatever consequence might be given if a child does something wrong. Let the parent do that. And I frame it in a way where I say to the step parent, you be the good one. You don't have to say you can't watch TV, for 2 nights because you did X. Let the parent say that. So if you frame it in the way where they get off easy and let the biological parent do the hard work, it generally works out. And their relationships are generally better that way.
That's good advice. That's great. And so, as you know, the name of the podcast is Klickline, when everything clicks. When was there a moment in your life, either personal or professional, that something all of a sudden clicked for you?
Well, I will tell the story about my child, my daughter, who is a lawyer and a mediator. And my life clicked and changed when she called me one day and said to me, Mom, you should learn to do mediation and you should learn to do divorce work, and then we'll work together. I had only been a therapist. And I had never done divorce work in this formal way. And she was doing it, and she belonged to an organization that was collaborative, that first only had attorneys, because she's an attorney, and then they started bringing mental health people in to work together in teams to do amicable divorce. And she called me up and she said, Mom, we'll work together. Get the training, and then we'll be in the same group together. And we've been working together for the last, 15 years.
Amazing mother-daughter power duo.
So that's a good click. We've worked on cases together and committees together, and it's just been very gratifying.
Wow, that's amazing. I love that. So it's like divine destiny, right? We're bringing in your daughter and you have this business together of helping people.
Yeah, so we've had some funny experiences. At one point, a couple came to me and they said they're working with a mediator and they need to work out some therapeutic issues. And I said, who's your mediator? Just because I was curious. And they told me my daughter's name. And I kind of looked a little funny and because they had no connection. And I said, did you notice we have the same last name? And they went, oh, what does that mean? I said, she's my daughter. And they went, really? And I said, well, if that's okay with you, I'm happy to work with you, but I just disclose that there is a connection. They said, oh, that's great.
Oh my gosh, that's great. And so do you work, I know you're based in New York, but do you work with people outside of your state as well?
Yeah, I do, because I work online.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time, Barbara. I love chatting with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so grateful for you for being on. I appreciate you. You're amazing.
Oh,
so thank you for being on the Klickline.
My pleasure. Lovely to meet you.
Don't forget to send in your questions and comments to the Klickline. And one more thing, the views and opinions expressed on this podcast are for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered professional advice. Please consult with qualified professionals for advice related to your specific situation.